In the arid silence of the Judean desert, a discovery unfolded in the mid-20th century that would challenge the very foundations of religious history. It was 1947, and a Bedouin shepherd, following a lost goat into the labyrinthine caves near the Dead Sea, stumbled upon something far more profound than he could have imagined. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight piercing the ancient darkness as his hand, guided by an unseen force, reached into a small aperture. What he pulled out were not mere fragments of pottery, but brittle leather scrolls encased in earthenware jars, preserved for nearly 2 millennia. The air in that cave, thick with the scent of ancient earth and forgotten time, seemed to hum with a secret finally ready to be told. This was no ordinary find. These were texts that whispered of a world long vanished, a past deliberately obscured, waiting patiently for the moment of its reemergence. Among the thousands of fragments unearthed in the subsequent years, a particular collection stood out, its script ancient Hebrew or Aramaic, its narratives unlike anything in the familiar biblical canon. These were not the Psalms or prophecies we knew. Instead, they spoke of celestial journeys, the descent of watchers, fallen angels, and the origins of evil itself, a cosmic drama unfolding on a scale rarely contemplated. Scholars sifting through the fragile parchment began to piece together a name that had long been relegated to the footnotes of history. The Book of Enoch. Its presence among the Dead Sea Scrolls was a shock, confirming not only its antiquity, but also its widespread influence within ancient Judaism and early Christianity. Yet, despite its evident importance, this text had been virtually erased from mainstream religious thought for centuries, a ghost in the sacred machine. The rediscovery of Enoch's writings ignited a quiet storm within academic circles. Here was a text, predating many New Testament books, that offered a detailed cosmology, an expansive angelic hierarchy, and a profound narrative about the origins of sin that resonated deeply with the earliest followers of Christ. But as its fragments were meticulously translated and analyzed, an uncomfortable truth began to emerge. This was not just a forgotten text, but one that appeared to have been actively suppressed. Its vivid descriptions of angelic rebellion and divine judgment, while powerful, presented a narrative that perhaps proved too challenging, too unorthodox for the nascent institution striving to define and standardize belief. The silence surrounding Enoch was not accidental. It was a deliberate omission, a strategic act of censorship, designed to shape the contours of what was considered sacred. This raises a profound, unsettling question. Why was such a foundational text, once revered by many, purged from the sacred canon? What truths did the Book of Enoch contain that were deemed too dangerous, too radical for the evolving religious establishment? Was its vision of the cosmos, its understanding of good and evil, its portrayal of divine interaction with humanity, a threat to emerging doctrines of power and control? Our journey begins here, in the dust of forgotten caves, with the fragments of a forbidden book. We seek to understand not just what Enoch wrote, but why its voice was silenced, and what those ancient erasures might reveal about the stories we tell ourselves today. In the ancient world, the Judean desert was not merely a desolate landscape. It was a contested frontier, a crucible where empires clashed and faiths wrestled for definition. By the 2nd century BCE, the land of Israel lay at the crossroads of vast civilizations. The lingering Hellenistic influence of the Seleucids to the north, the Ptolemaic legacy in Egypt to the south, and the ever-expanding shadow of Rome from the west. Jerusalem, the beating heart of Judaism, was a city of profound spiritual fervor, but also of simmering political unrest and intense theological debate. It was within this tumultuous setting a world grappling with foreign occupation and internal divisions. That texts like the Book of Enoch found fertile ground. Its narratives of divine judgment, cosmic battles, and the ultimate triumph of righteousness offered solace and explanation to a people navigating profound uncertainty, providing a framework for understanding suffering and the promise of a future redemption that transcended earthly politics. Among the various Jewish sects that emerged in response to these pressures, one group, the Essenes, stands out as a key custodian of Enoch's wisdom. Retreating from what they perceived as the corruption of the Jerusalem temple establishment, they formed ascetic communities, most notably at Qumran, on the shores of the Dead Sea. Their rigorous discipline, their communal life, and their fervent apocalyptic expectations align perfectly with the themes articulated in Enoch. For the Essenes, Enoch was not mere folklore. It was a foundational text, a detailed blueprint of the cosmos, providing insights into angelic hierarchies, the origins of evil, and the precise timing of divine intervention. The meticulous care with which they copied and preserved these scrolls, burying them in caves for future generations, speaks volumes about their conviction in Enoch's authenticity and its crucial role in their spiritual worldview, a testament to a faith movement that found profound truth in its forbidden pages. The influence of Enoch, however, was not confined to isolated desert sects. As Christianity began to emerge from the fertile soil of first-century Judaism, Enoch's presence within the nascent movement was undeniable. Early Christian writers and apostles frequently referenced its themes and even quoted directly from its passages. The New Testament letter of Jude, for instance, explicitly cites a prophecy from Enoch concerning the coming judgment, treating it as an authoritative word. Concepts like the Watchers, their fall, and the subsequent corruption of humanity, as detailed in Enoch, informed early Christian understandings of sin, demonology, and the cosmic struggle between good and evil. For a time, Enoch provided a shared theological vocabulary, a cosmic backdrop against which the drama of Christ's mission could be understood. It was an integral part of the spiritual landscape, informing the very foundations of what would become a global faith. Yet, as the decades turned into centuries, a profound shift began. Within Judaism, following the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, the focus turned toward rebuilding and defining a coherent identity in exile. Rabbinic Judaism began to coalesce, emphasizing the Torah and a more circumscribed set of prophetic writings. Texts that were deemed too speculative, too Hellenistic, or too apocalyptic, like Enoch, began to be gradually marginalized. The need for a standardized canon, a shared body of authoritative scripture to unite a scattered people, naturally led to a process of selection and exclusion. What was once widely accepted in some circles became suspect in others. This wasn't necessarily an act of deliberate malice, but rather a strategic consolidation of identity, a painstaking effort to draw boundaries around what was considered sacred and essential for survival, inadvertently pushing profound alternative narratives into the shadows. A similar, perhaps even more intense, struggle unfolded within early Christianity. As the burgeoning faith expanded across the Roman Empire, it encountered a multitude of philosophical and religious currents. The early church faced internal theological battles, particularly against movements like Gnosticism, which also often incorporated elaborate cosmologies and angelic hierarchies. In this volatile environment, the rich, often complex and highly detailed angelic narratives of Enoch, while initially resonant, began to pose a challenge. Its descriptions of cosmic journeys and divine secrets could be misinterpreted or co-opted by groups deemed heretical, threatening the nascent church's efforts to establish a singular, unified doctrine. The question was not just what to believe, but how to believe it, and which texts would guide the faithful on this increasingly formalized path. The formalization of the Christian canon, a process that spanned several centuries, culminated in various church councils where bishops and theologians debated the authenticity and divine inspiration of countless texts. Figures like Athanasius of Alexandria and Jerome, the translator of the Latin Vulgate, played pivotal roles in shaping the contours of the accepted scriptures. While Enoch was initially highly regarded and even included in some early lists of canonical books, its omission from the final, widely accepted canon was a decisive moment. Its complex angelology, its detailed accounts of fallen watchers, and its apocalyptic visions, while powerful, likely proved too challenging to reconcile with the emerging theological frameworks that prioritized a more streamlined narrative of salvation and divine order. The decision to exclude it was a calculated move, designed to reinforce doctrinal unity and consolidate institutional authority. What, then, were the specific truths within the Book of Enoch that were deemed too dangerous, too radical for these evolving religious establishments? One could argue its elaborate angelic hierarchy and its detailed account of the Watcher's fall offered an alternative, perhaps even unsettling, explanation for the origin of evil, one that diverged from later doctrines emphasizing human free will as the primary source of sin. Its vivid descriptions of cosmic judgment, while powerful, might have been seen as too apocalyptic or too prone to misinterpretation in a world already prone to unrest. Furthermore, the sheer breadth of its extra-biblical knowledge, its claims of divine secrets revealed through Enoch's celestial journeys, could have undermined the authority of institutional interpreters, empowering individual revelation over established ecclesiastical structures. This was not just a theological debate. It was a struggle for control over the very nature of sacred knowledge. The deliberate suppression of the Book of Enoch from mainstream religious thought represents more than just the loss of an ancient text. It signifies the conscious shaping of our understanding of history, faith, and the very nature of truth. Its removal created a void, an absence that perhaps simplified complex theological questions, but also stripped away a rich layer of ancient spiritual heritage. We are left to ponder what alternative narratives of creation, sin, and redemption might have flourished had Enoch remained central. What understanding of angels, demons, and the cosmic struggle did we lose? Our journey continues, probing the echoes of this ancient erasure, seeking to understand not only what was hidden, but why, and what those ancient acts of censorship might reveal about the stories we choose to believe today. The true revelation contained within. The Book of Enoch strikes at the very heart of the biblical narrative, a detailed account of a divine rebellion that fundamentally reshapes the origin of sin and human suffering. It speaks not merely of Adam and Eve's transgression, but of an earlier cosmic fall. Enoch describes the Watchers, a group of high-ranking angels who descended to earth captivated by human women. This was not a passive observation. They swore an oath and violated divine decree, intermingling with humanity and begetting monstrous offspring known as the Nephilim. This account, far from being a simple moral tale, posits a direct, tangible corruption of the human lineage and the earth itself, orchestrated by powerful celestial beings who deliberately defied God. It's a truth that suggests humanity's fall was not solely an internal failing, but a consequence of a much larger, more ancient cosmic war. But the Watchers' transgression went beyond mere procreation. Enoch reveals they imparted forbidden knowledge to humanity, secrets of metallurgy, the crafting of weapons and armor, the art of cosmetics, the cutting of roots, and even astrology and divination. This wasn't divine guidance. It was a corrupting influence, accelerating human technological and cultural development in ways that led to war, vanity, and idolatry. The world described by Enoch quickly descended into chaos, filled with violence and injustice, precisely because humanity was given tools and knowledge it was not meant to possess, before it was spiritually ready. This detailed explanation for the rapid moral decay of early humanity offered a stark, unsettling alternative to the more concise narratives of Genesis, suggesting that our very foundations were tainted by illicit divine intervention. This ancient text provides a radical, unsettling answer to the question of why the Great Flood was necessary. While Genesis attributes the flood to humanity's widespread wickedness, Enoch specifies the source of that wickedness, the direct actions of the fallen watchers and their monstrous progeny. The earth became so defiled by their violence, their forbidden teachings, and the rampant immorality they introduced that a cosmic cleansing was required. The Nephilim, described as giants who devoured all of humanity's produce and turned against them, are depicted as a primary reason for divine judgment. This shifts the focus from solely human depravity to a more complex scenario involving celestial beings actively corrupting the world, making the flood not just a punishment for human sin, but a necessary act to purge the earth of an insidious, supernaturally driven evil. Could it be, then, that the suppression of Enoch was not solely an act of human censorship, but also, paradoxically, a form of divine protection? Perhaps the truths contained within its pages were considered too profound, too susceptible to misinterpretation, too dangerous for a nascent humanity grappling with its own spiritual evolution. The detailed cosmology, the intricate hierarchy of angels and demons, the explicit accounts of forbidden knowledge could have fueled Gnostic movements, leading to esoteric cults, or even outright despair if humanity felt utterly powerless against such cosmic forces. The simplification of the origin of evil, focusing primarily on human free will, might have been a deliberate choice to empower believers, offering a clearer path to redemption without the overwhelming complexity of a universe actively corrupted by renegade divine beings. However, another, perhaps more pragmatic, reason for Enoch's suppression lies in the consolidation of institutional power. The text grants Enoch extraordinary access to divine secrets, portraying him as a celestial traveler, a direct recipient of profound revelations from God and his angels. This vision of direct, unmediated divine communication threatened the emerging authority of priestly classes and eventually the institutional church. If individuals could access such deep spiritual truths outside of established hierarchies, what need was there for an intermediary, for a church structure to interpret the divine? Enoch's narrative implicitly champions individual revelation, a concept that could easily undermine the centralized control necessary for an expanding religious institution striving to standardize doctrine and maintain order across a vast empire. As Christianity spread across the Roman world, it faced the immense challenge of defining itself amidst a multitude of competing philosophies and religions. The intricate angelology and demonology of the Book of Enoch, while initially influential, presented a theological minefield. Its elaborate descriptions of cosmic battles and the specific roles of various angels could easily be co-opted by Gnostic sects or other groups deemed heretical, who wove complex myths around such figures. To build a unified, accessible faith for millions, the early church leaders sought a more streamlined narrative of salvation, one that emphasized Christ's singular role without the potential distractions of a sprawling angelic bureaucracy or a detailed prehistory of cosmic evil that might overshadow the message of redemption. The implications for the nature of Jesus Christ himself were also profound. If the Book of Enoch offered a comprehensive explanation for the origins of evil and the corruption of the world, how would the unique salvific role of Christ be understood? While Enoch's themes of judgment and redemption certainly resonated with early Christian thought, its detailed prehistory of divine intervention and forbidden knowledge could have complicated the emerging doctrines of Christ as the definitive answer to all sin. A church striving to present a clear, unified message of redemption through Christ alone, might have found Enoch's expansive cosmology too unwieldy, too prone to divergent interpretations that could dilute or even challenge the central tenets of its faith. The secrets the Vatican tried to hide, as the premise suggests, point to a deliberate, calculated effort by the nascent Roman Church to shape the historical and theological narrative. As the early councils convened to finalize the Christian canon, texts like Enoch, despite their earlier popularity, were systematically excluded. This was not a passive oversight. It was an active rejection, a strategic decision to remove narratives that did not align with the emerging institutional power structure and its preferred theological framework. The condemnation of certain ideas, the labeling of specific texts as apocryphal or heretical, and even the destruction of dissenting writings became tools to enforce doctrinal unity and consolidate authority, ensuring that the Church's interpretation of truth reigned supreme. So what does this ancient erasure, this deliberate silencing of a foundational text, reveal about our modern search for meaning? It forces us to confront the unsettling reality that the stories we consider sacred, the histories we accept as truth, are often the result of deliberate choices made by powerful institutions. What else might have been left out? What alternative understandings of the divine, of humanity's place in the cosmos, have been lost to us because they didn't fit a particular agenda? The absence of Enoch from our mainstream Bibles is a stark reminder that knowledge itself can be a battleground, and that control over information has always been a fundamental aspect of power, whether ancient or modern. The rediscovery of Enoch's writings compels us to re-examine the very foundations of our belief systems. It opens a window into a world where angels walked among us, where forbidden knowledge shaped our destiny, and where the origin of evil was a cosmic drama far more intricate than often portrayed. This isn't just about ancient history. It's about understanding how narratives are constructed, how power influences truth, and what fragments of our spiritual heritage we might still be missing. Perhaps the real mystery isn't what was written in those forbidden scrolls, but what was erased from our collective memory and why. The moral implications of the Book of Enoch's narrative are profound, challenging the very bedrock of established religious thought. If the origin of widespread evil and human suffering can be traced not solely to Adam and Eve's transgression, but to the deliberate corruption by divine beings, the Watchers, then humanity's culpability takes on a drastically different dimension. This isn't merely a tale of human free will leading to sin. It's a cosmic drama where powerful celestial forces actively interfered, imparting forbidden knowledge and polluting the human lineage. This perspective fundamentally reshapes our understanding of original sin. Is it an inherent flaw in human nature, or a consequence of a much larger, insidious external corruption that permeated the world from its very foundations? The answers unearthed in the Judean desert force us to grapple with a more complex, perhaps unsettling view of our own moral origins and the forces that have shaped our destiny. Spiritually, Enoch paints a cosmos far more intricate and perilous than the sanitized versions often presented. The heavens are not merely a realm of perfect harmony. They are also a stage for rebellion, where powerful angels can fall, lust after human women, and actively sow discord and violence on earth. This detailed angelology and demonology suggest a universe teeming with active, influential spiritual entities, both benevolent and malevolent, whose actions directly impact humanity. It implies that the struggle between good and evil is not just an internal human battle, but an ongoing, active cosmic war with tangible consequences for our world. This expansive spiritual landscape challenges simpler dualisms, presenting a universe where divine order is not absolute and where humanity finds itself caught in the crossfire of celestial dramas, profoundly influencing our understanding of spiritual warfare and the very nature of divine governance. Historically, the suppression of Enoch reveals a critical dynamic in the formation of religious institutions: the strategic consolidation of power through narrative control. As nascent Judaism and early Christianity sought to define their identities and establish authoritative doctrines, texts that offered alternative, challenging, or overly complex narratives were systematically marginalized. Enoch's direct revelations, its elaborate cosmology, and its accounts of angelic disobedience could have easily undermined the authority of emerging priestly classes and centralized church structures. By removing such texts, institutions ensured a more streamlined, controllable narrative that reinforced their chosen theological frameworks and their role as exclusive interpreters of divine truth. This wasn't merely a theological debate. It was a profound struggle for the very definition of sacred knowledge and the authority to disseminate it, shaping centuries of belief. Yet, the echoes of Enoch's narrative did not entirely vanish. Across various ancient traditions, we find tantalizing parallels to its themes, suggesting a common thread of human experience or perhaps a shared suppressed memory. From the Sumerian Apkallu, semi-divine beings who imparted knowledge to humanity before a great flood, to the Greek myths of titans and gods intermingling with mortals, leading to chaos and divine intervention, the motif of celestial beings influencing human civilization is remarkably persistent. These hidden clues, scattered through disparate mythologies, hint at a deeper, pan-cultural understanding of forbidden knowledge and divine transgression that resonates with Enoch's account. They suggest that while the formal text was largely erased from the Judeo-Christian canon, the underlying truths or archetypal narratives it contained continued to manifest, albeit in fragmented and often secularized forms, across the ancient world. The Book of Enoch reshapes our view of the divine, presenting a God who is actively engaged in cosmic justice, yet also one whose creation is susceptible to profound corruption from within its celestial ranks. This God is not distant, but intensely concerned with the moral state of the world, to the point of enacting a global cleansing through the Great Flood, specifically to purge the earth of the Watcher's progeny and their destructive influence. This portrayal challenges notions of an all-perfect, immutable divine plan, suggesting instead a dynamic, responsive deity who must intervene dramatically to correct profound cosmic errors. It forces us to contemplate the complexities of divine governance. A God who permits celestial rebellion, allows its devastating consequences to unfold, and then must act decisively to restore order, offering a more nuanced and perhaps more humanly relatable understanding of divine power and justice. Bringing this ancient erasure into the modern era, the Book of Enoch offers a chilling lesson on the enduring power of censorship and the control of information. In an age saturated with data, where narratives are constantly being constructed and deconstructed, Enoch's story serves as a stark reminder that what is omitted can be as significant as what is preserved. It prompts us to question the sources of our knowledge, to look beyond officially sanctioned histories, and to consider what alternative perspectives might have been deliberately sidelined. The ancient struggle to define truth by exclusion resonates powerfully today, urging us to be critical explorers of our own belief systems, to seek out the voices that were silenced, and to understand the mechanisms by which power continues to shape our perception of reality, both sacred and secular. The most direct challenge Enoch poses is to the very dogma of human exceptionalism in the origin of sin. If the primary cause of humanity's corruption was external, initiated by fallen angels, it fundamentally alters the theological framework of original sin and, by extension, the precise nature of salvation. While early Christianity found resonance in Enoch's themes of judgment and redemption, Its detailed prehistory of cosmic evil could have complicated the evolving doctrine of Christ's singular role in atoning for all sin, especially if that sin had such a profound non-human origin. The Church's eventual decision to exclude Enoch was a calculated move to simplify and consolidate its message, ensuring that Christ remained the definitive answer to a more streamlined understanding of human depravity, thus reinforcing a specific theological narrative at the expense of a much richer, albeit more complex, cosmic tapestry. Ultimately, the rediscovery of the Book of Enoch is a revelation that transcends mere archaeological curiosity. It is an invitation to re-examine the foundations of our faith and the narratives that define our understanding of good and evil. Its presence among the Dead Sea Scrolls cracks open a window into a world where the boundaries between heaven and earth were far more porous, where divine intervention was both a blessing and a curse, and where the origins of our deepest spiritual questions were intricately woven into a cosmic rebellion. This ancient text compels us to ask, what else was lost when these pages were turned to dust? Or when their truths were deemed too dangerous to remember? Maybe the real mystery isn't what was written in those forbidden scrolls, but what was erased from our collective memory, and why. The dusty fragments of the Book of Enoch, once dismissed as curiosities, now sit in modern academic institutions, their ancient words resonating with profound contemporary relevance. In an age where information flows freely, yet truth is often contested, Enoch's journey from revered scripture to forgotten apocrypha offers a chilling lesson. It compels us to confront the uncomfortable reality that our understanding of history and faith is not always a pure, unfiltered transmission from antiquity, but often a meticulously curated narrative, shaped by human hands and institutional agendas. This isn't just about what ancient peoples believed. It's about how those beliefs were managed, controlled, and sometimes deliberately obscured to serve evolving power structures. The text challenges us to look beyond the familiar, to question the silences in our sacred stories, and to consider what fundamental aspects of the divine, of evil, and of humanity's cosmic role might have been consciously edited out of our collective consciousness, impacting our spiritual landscape today. The implications are not just historical, but deeply personal, urging a re-evaluation of the very foundations of our contemporary belief systems. The re-emergence of the Book of Enoch. From the desert caves near the Dead Sea is a powerful testament to the enduring nature of truth, or perhaps the sheer resilience of memory itself. For nearly 2 millennia, these scrolls lay hidden, preserved by the very arid conditions that seem to promise their oblivion, patiently waiting for a moment when humanity might be ready to receive their challenging message. It speaks to a profound truth, that while institutions may attempt to bury or erase inconvenient narratives, some stories possess an inherent power to resurface, to defy suppression, and to eventually reclaim their place in the human story. This saga of rediscovery is a reminder that the past is never truly settled. It is a living, breathing entity, constantly being reinterpreted and revealing new facets as new evidence comes to light. The enduring presence of Enoch, despite centuries of official condemnation, suggests that certain ideas, once planted, can transcend generations and institutional efforts to silence them, proving that the human spirit's quest for deeper understanding can never be fully extinguished. In our modern world, where the pursuit of information is relentless and skepticism towards established narratives is commonplace, the story of the Book of Enoch serves as a potent parable. It urges us to become explorers of our own intellectual and spiritual landscapes, to dig beneath the surface of accepted truths, and to question the origins of the stories that shape our understanding of reality. If such a foundational text could be deliberately excluded from the most widely read book in human history, what other voices, what other perspectives, What other inconvenient truths might still lie buried, awaiting their rediscovery? This ancient act of censorship, driven by a desire for doctrinal unity and institutional control, casts a long shadow into our present, prompting us to critically examine the power dynamics inherent in the construction of any narrative, whether religious, historical, or scientific. It is a call to intellectual courage, to seek out the marginalized texts, the dissenting voices, and the fragments of knowledge that might offer a more complete, albeit more complex, picture of our shared past and our uncertain future. As the sun sets over the Judean desert, casting long shadows across the very caves that guarded Enoch's secrets, we are left with a lingering question, an echo across millennia. The journey into the lost world of the Book of Enoch is not merely an archaeological expedition. It is a profound exploration into the nature of truth itself, how it is forged, how it is protected, and how it can be suppressed. The vibrant, complex cosmology it presents challenges our comfortable certainties, reminding us that the universe and our place within it might be far more intricate and mysterious than any single canon suggests. We are left to ponder the vastness of what we do not know, the countless narratives that were deemed too dangerous, too radical, or simply too inconvenient for the institutions that sought to define our world. Perhaps the real mystery isn't what was written in those forbidden scrolls, nor even why they were hidden for so long, but what other profound truths were deliberately erased from our collective memory, and what power those ancient erasures still hold over us today.